Bathroom Breaks and Bedtime Tales presents Grady Hart, The Reckoning at Hell's Back Door, Episode 4, Part 2, by Sevastian Winters. Grady Hart rode into Guthrie just as the sun sank low. Dust and heat swirled through the air, gritty against his skin. The town stretched out before him like a tired sigh. Guthrie had the look of a place that had seen its share of hard men and harder days. His horse, Crow, stepped through the dusty streets, hooves clopping a slow rhythm against the cracked earth. Every creak of a weathered door and shuffle of boots seemed to pause as he passed, eyes peeking from behind curtains and dark windows. Grady reined in near the old livery and dismounted, his boots hitting the ground with a dull thud. The air was thick, carrying the smell of sweat, smoke, and something sour, trouble brewing just beneath the surface. He felt a bullet whistle past his ear before he heard the shot ring out. Grady hit the dirt fast and heard another bullet bite into the post behind him. Wood splintered, shards flying like angry wasps. Grady dropped lower and drew his Colt, eyes scanning the dark alleys and rooftops. His breath came slow and steady despite the sudden tension. His gaze flicked to the shadows shifting near the saloon. Movement, someone drawn back. He crouched lower, aiming his gun, finger steady on the trigger, ready to send a bullet in their direction. "Easy there, princess," a voice drawled, low and mocking. A cold barrel pressed into the back of his neck. "You're a long way from home. You got business here, or are you just passing through?" Grady's jaw clenched. The voice was familiar, the tone even more so. He didn't turn, but he knew who'd gotten the drop on him. Only one man had ever managed to get that close without him knowing. The only man who'd ever called him princess. Grady let out a breath through his nose, a slow smile curling on his lips. "Just here looking for your sister. Had some spare quarters burning a hole in my pocket." There was a beat of silence. "Well, you're in luck then," said his assailant. "Just this morning, she dropped her rates and her standards." The gun uncocked, and both men began to laugh. "Thank the good Lord you ain't never had a sister," Grady laughed as he turned and faced his old war buddy Sam Rawlins. The two men embraced like brothers. Grady pulled away and surveyed his old friend. Other than a brass five-pointed star pinned to his chest, the man hadn't changed much. Still had that wiry build, the cocky grin, and eyes sharp as a hawk's. His hat was tipped back, and the smile on his lips was all trouble. "Well, hell," Sam said, holstering his gun, "if it ain't Grady Hart, come back from the dead." Grady slid his Colt back into its holster. "Reckon I was never gone, just took the long way around." They eyed each other in the fading light, a silent measure of the years between them. Then Sam's grin softened, and he clapped Grady on the shoulder. "Come on, old man. I got a bottle that's been waiting for just such an occasion." Inside the saloon, the air was thick with the scent of old beer, sweat, and the faint undercurrent of desperation that hung over places like Guthrie. Grady followed Sam to a corner table where a bottle of tequila and a couple of shot glasses waited. They sat down, each taking a moment to pour a drink, the sound of liquid sloshing into glass the only noise between them. Sam tossed back his shot, his eyes glinting in the lantern light. "So, what brings you through my neck of the woods, Grady?" Grady rolled the tequila around in his glass before downing it. It burned, but he welcomed the heat. "Got a man needs finding down Laredo way, Amos Tanner. Figure I could use a familiar face along for the ride." Sam's smile faded, turning thoughtful as he poured another shot. Amos Tanner. Heard some whisperings. They say he got tangled up with some bad men. Sold off like a piece of livestock. I guess slavery ain't as dead as we was told just yet. Grady's expression darkened, and he set the glass down hard enough to rattle the table. Yeah, Crowder. Bastard sold him off right under his wife's nose. She's back in Kentucky, waiting. Sam let out a long sigh, rubbing the back of his neck. "And you need me for this?" Grady's gaze never wavered. "I need a man I can trust. Plus, you owe me a favor, I figure." Sam snorted, a wry smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. "Ain't that the truth? But unfortunately, I can't saddle up right now. I got some business here that needs taken care of." Grady raised an eyebrow. "This business got a name?" "Fulton," Sam said, his voice going cold. "Him and his boys have been leaning on a woman I know, Mary. They want her land, and they're willing to burn her out to get it. She's been holding on with my help, but they're getting desperate." Grady sat back, considering. He poured himself another shot, his mind working through the angles. This Fulton, how many men's he got? "Half a dozen, maybe more, if he's had time to gather some strays," Sam replied, his expression grim. "They're coming tonight, Grady. Figured I'd give 'em a welcome they won't forget." Grady glanced out the window, the shadows growing longer. He reached for the bottle and poured a final shot, his expression hardening. "Reckon I'll give you a hand." A few hours and half a bottle of tequila later, the pair found the moonless night thick and humid as they rode toward Mary's homestead, the scent of rain heavy in the air. Thunder rumbled in the distance, promising a storm. Sam led the way, his rifle resting across his saddle, eyes scanning the horizon. Grady rode beside him, Crow's hooves beating a steady rhythm against the packed earth. Mary's place came into view, a simple cabin with a barn behind it, a faint glow from the lantern inside. But as they drew closer, Grady spotted movement near the tree line. Men slipping through the darkness, rifles slung across their shoulders. They had the look of men who'd rather kill than talk. Grady and Sam dismounted quietly, tying their horses to a post near the barn. Grady checked his Colt, making sure it was loaded and ready. He glanced at Sam, who had a fierce light in his eyes, one that Grady recognized all too well. "You sure you're up for this, Sam?" Grady asked, his voice low. Sam gave a tight nod, his jaw clenched. "They want to burn her out, Grady. I ain't letting that happen." They moved through the shadows, sticking close to the barn. The air crackled with the tension of a storm about to break, the smell of wood smoke drifting from a distant campfire. They crouched behind a stack of barrels near the edge of the property, watching as Fulton's men gathered near the cabin. Fulton himself stepped forward, holding a torch that cast flickering light across his scarred face. "Mary!" he shouted, his voice carrying through the night. "Last chance! Sign over the deed, or we burn you out!" There was a pause. Then Mary's voice rang out from inside the cabin, defiant but tinged with fear. "Go to hell, Fulton!" Fulton's sneer widened, and he raised the torch higher. "Suit yourself." Before he could throw it, Grady stepped out from the shadows, his Colt aimed squarely at Fulton's chest. "Drop it." Fulton's eyes went wide as he spotted Grady, then narrowed with hatred. "You picked the wrong night to play hero, stranger." "I ain't playing," Grady replied, his voice cold as steel. Sam stepped up beside him, rifle at the ready. "We can end this quick, or we can end it bloody. Your choice." For a moment, the only sound was the rumble of thunder. Then Fulton dropped the torch into the dirt, glaring daggers at Grady. "You think you can scare me? You don't know who you're messing with." Grady took a step closer, his Colt steady in his grip. "Reckon you're about to find out." The fight that followed was short, violent, and ugly. Gunfire cracked through the night, flashes of muzzle light cutting through the darkness. Grady and Sam moved like they were back in the war, covering each other, picking off Fulton's men one by one. By the time a last shot echoed away, the ground was littered with bodies, blood soaking into the earth. Fulton and one of his men were all that remained, their guns lost in the scuffle, their faces pale with terror. Grady and Sam forced them to their knees near the old oak tree, tying ropes around their ankles, leaving them to dangle over the massive anthill that swarmed below. The men thrashed and begged, their voices raw with fear. "You can't do this," Fulton shouted, his voice cracking. "You're supposed to be the law." Grady looked him dead in the eye, his expression cold as winter. "I'm a justice man, not a lawman." He pointed at Sam. "There's your lawman right there." Fulton turned his attention to Sam, who regarded him with the same disdain Grady had offered him. "Law's what we make of it out here." He leaned in close to the man's ear, his voice a mocking whisper. "Enjoy the ants, boys. They're hungrier than you think." They shoved both the men backward, leaving them to dangle, hair brushing the ants that swarmed below. The first bites came fast, sharp, burning stings that made the men scream, their cries echoing through the night air. Grady and Sam turned their backs on the scene, letting the darkness and the ants take their course. Mary stood on the porch, her hands trembling as she watched the outlaws writhe. "Thank you," she whispered, tears in her eyes. Grady nodded once, his expression unreadable. "Take care of yourself, Mary." He turned to Sam, the unspoken question in his eyes. Sam clapped him on the shoulder, the old grin returning. "I owe you one, Grady. Let's go find this Amos fella." They mounted their horses, the dawn creeping over the horizon, casting long shadows over the swaying bodies and the town that would never forget what happened here. They rode south together, leaving the past behind, but with the sense that more lay ahead on the trail to Laredo.